You think babysitting is an easy job. Just put the kids to sleep and wait for their parents to come home. Then you've never heard knocking from the closet, never seen a shadow crawl past the window at midnight, and certainly never opened your eyes to find the babysitter standing beside your bed, silent. In today's video, you'll hear 3 true stories: a single mother, 3 children, and a closet with someone waiting just outside. A 5-year-old boy warns about tapping on the glass until it appears. And a teenage babysitter enters the bedroom at night with one reason: to check. No jump scares, no monsters, just chilling moments when you realize the scariest thing isn't the supernatural. It's people, right when you think you're safe. If you've ever heard a sound behind a door, hesitated before pulling the curtain at night, stay until the end of the video. And if something made you shiver, or if you've had a similar experience, leave a comment below. We're listening. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. It might be closer than you think. Her name was Emily, 18 years old, a freshman psychology major at a small community college in the suburbs. She never thought that babysitting would be the thing that brought her face to face with the first real fear of her life. The Jacobsons lived in a modest 2-story house with weathered roof tiles and a white picket fence flaking with old paint. Lucy, a single mother of 3, was always kind and respectful. She worked night shifts as a nurse at a hospital nearly 40 minutes away and often relied on someone in town to babysit when her schedule changed last minute. Emily was the most reliable choice, at least until that fateful night. Adam was just 3, quiet and well-behaved, usually falling asleep clutching a stuffed animal. Chris, the oldest at 7, was lost in a world of Mario and Sonic, rarely acknowledging anyone around him. Bobby, 5, fell somewhere in between, and somehow always seemed to be at the center of the emotional turbulence in that house. That night, after feeding and bathing the kids, Emily played a few rounds of Wii tennis with Chris in the living room, while Adam had already drifted off. Around 9 p.m., she walked Bobby to bed, tucked him in, placed his teddy bear in his arms, and promised to leave the door open. As she turned to leave, Bobby grabbed her sleeve. His eyes, an unusually deep shade of blue, seemed to be holding back something unsaid. "There's a sound in the closet," he said, voice low and far too serious for a child. Emily smiled, the way adults often do at childish fears. She gently touched Bobby's cheek and reassured him with a soft joke or two. But as she stepped out of the room, something made her turn back, and she saw Bobby still staring wide-eyed at the dark, wooden closet, its doors tightly shut as if they hadn't been touched at all. She didn't know that behind that layer of wood, something was already staring back. Emily returned downstairs, still slightly unsettled by Bobby's strange expression. Chris was waiting to resume their unfinished tennis match, grumbling about the interruption, but Emily just smiled and patted his head. She didn't think much of it. Kids, after all, had vivid imaginations, especially before bedtime. But just a few minutes into the game, the sound of crying drifted down from upstairs. Not loud, tantrum-like crying, but soft, choked sobs. Bobby again. Emily rushed up. Bobby's door was still ajar, just as she'd left it, with the warm yellow glow of the nightlight spilling out dimly. The boy had burrowed completely under his blanket, his small body trembling. She stepped closer and gently lifted the blanket. His face was soaked in tears. "There's something in the closet," Bobby whispered. "It was scratching from the inside. I heard it." Emily swallowed hard. She looked toward the closet. The wooden doors remained shut, unchanged. But this time, something kept her from brushing it off. The air in the room felt heavier. The silence wasn't just nighttime quiet. It was the kind of silence where someone is trying not to breathe. "Do you want me to open it and check?" Emily asked softly. Bobby shook his head violently. "Don't. It'll know." Emily hesitated for a few seconds, then stood up and slowly walked toward the wooden closet. The floorboards creaked beneath her. She reached for the handle. Click. A faint sound, like the softest tap, came from inside. She froze. Bobby whispered behind her, "That! You heard it, right?" Emily spun around and scooped him up, heart pounding. She carried him out of the room and into Chris's. Chris had just stepped out of the bathroom, staring wide-eyed. Without explaining, Emily pulled him along, too, into Adam's room. She closed the door behind them and locked both the bathroom and hallway doors. "What's going on?" Chris asked. "We're just playing hide and seek, okay?" Emily whispered, trying to stay calm. As the kids began sensing that something was off, Emily quietly pulled out her phone and called Lucy. Her voice trembled. "Could you check if there's any chance a raccoon or a cat got into the house somehow? I heard something from inside the closet." Lucy was silent for a few seconds. Then she whispered, "Which closet?" "Bobby's room, the one near the window. There was a noise. I'm not sure, but..." Lucy exhaled sharply. "The one near the window? Oh, God." A cold silence followed. "It might be him," Lucy said quietly. "My ex-husband. He once hid inside the house. I thought he couldn't get in again." Emily stood frozen. Then she turned toward the three children, now beginning to sense the fear. The wooden closet, the sounds, and now, the terrifying possibility that a man, a real man, might be in there. A chill passed over her neck. Someone was very close. Emily held the phone tightly to her ear, listening to Lucy's voice grow quieter, as if she too was trying to suppress a rising panic. "Don't go back into Bobby's room," Lucy said, her voice urgent. "If it's him, he knows where the kids are. You need to get them out, right now." "Did you call the police?" Emily asked. "I'm calling them now, but it'll be at least 10 minutes before they get there." Emily looked at the three kids, Adam still asleep, Chris trying to make sense of what was happening, and Bobby clutching his teddy bear, face pale as a ghost. She needed to get out of the house, but the only way out was through the hallway, past the wooden stairs where a soft creak had just echoed. Footsteps, very soft, as if someone was trying to walk without being heard. Emily immediately locked the door to Adam's room and dragged a chair under the handle. She turned off the light. The room sank into dimness, lit only by moonlight bleeding through the curtains. The three children were silent. She redialed Lucy, holding the phone like a fragile lifeline. 1 minute passed, then 2. Emily pressed her ear to the door, trying not to tremble. Everything outside was silent. And then, click. A sound so faint, she had to strain to hear it. The doorknob to Bobby's room was turning slowly. Then, creak. The wooden door opened a crack. Someone had stepped out of the closet. Or worse, they had always known someone was listening. Emily clenched her hand. She couldn't wait any longer. She whispered into the phone, "Lucy, I'm going to open the door. When I see a chance, I'll take the kids and run for the front door." Lucy sobbed on the other end. "Be careful." Emily gently moved the chair aside, gripped the doorknob, and at that moment, bang! A door slammed somewhere near the stairs. Footsteps, squealing hinges, and then absolute silence. She cracked the door open and peeked down the hallway. No one. The front door had slammed shut. She guided the children quietly downstairs. Every step felt like walking on thin glass. As they reached the foyer, she glanced back. Bobby's room door was still open, still and silent. Inside, it was pitch black. She didn't need to check. She knew he had been there. And now, he was out. She rushed to the front door, locked it, then dropped to the floor, hands shaking as she called 911. Outside, Lucy's car had just pulled in, its headlights casting a long beam across the porch. Police arrived minutes later. No clear evidence, no witnesses. But the closet, inside, smelled of a person, of sweat, and had scratch marks on the inside of the wooden door, as if someone had clawed at it for hours. Emily never went back to that house, but sometimes, at night, she still hears the creak of wood in her dreams, and a freezing hand clutching hers from behind a closet door that was never fully shut. The police found nothing, no footprints, no scraps of fabric, no clues. They asked Emily if she was sure she had heard the sound from inside the closet. She nodded. They asked if it could have been a rat or a stray cat or even her imagination. She didn't answer because she knew exactly what she had felt, and worse, what she had sensed. The feeling of being watched, of being followed, of being awaited. Lucy admitted in a trembling voice that her ex-husband had broken into the house a few times before. He had once known where the spare key was hidden. He had sent threatening texts. He had stood outside her workplace for hours, never breaking eye contact. But this time, there were no messages, no warnings, only a closet door left ajar, and the overwhelming, suffocating scent of a real person still lingering in the room. After that night, Lucy changed the locks, installed cameras, sent her children to stay with their grandparents for a few weeks. As for Emily, she never babysat again. Not because she feared children, but ever since that night, she carried a fear no one else could see. A fear of small enclosed spaces. A fear of opening doors that had stayed shut for too long. A fear of dreams where something crawls out of the darkness, slowly, deliberately, and knowing her name. Years later, when she had children of her own, Emily always taught them one rule before bed. Never open the closet if you hear something inside. And if the closet is closed, leave it that way. Because some doors, once cracked open, they aren't just for you to look at. They're for something else, to look out. That night, it rained. Not a sudden downpour that comes and goes, but a persistent drizzle, light yet cold, as if the sky were whispering something no one could quite hear. Jenna, 14 years old, stepped into a 2-story suburban American home where she had been hired to babysit 2 boys, 10-year-old Alexander and 5-year-old Danny. This family was friends of Jenna's grandmother, living not far from her school. Even on her first visit, Jenna had sensed something off about the house. Not strange exactly, just overly quiet. Despite the sound of cartoons playing on TV, despite the boys laughing and running around, there was still something in the air that she couldn't quite name. Before leaving, the parents handed Jenna a sheet of paper, a list of tasks, dietary preferences, bedtime routines, and emergency numbers. At the very bottom, scribbled in slightly uneven handwriting, was a note. Danny says someone knocks on his window at night. Don't worry about it. We think he's imagining things. Jenna read it and chuckled softly. She had been a kid once, too. She understood. She'd heard rain become footsteps. She'd once mistaken the shadow of a tree for a monster. But a small part of her still felt something was off. That evening, after dinner and playtime, Jenna got the boys into bed by 9. Danny seemed reluctant to sleep. He kept glancing at the window like he was expecting something. "It's just thunder," Jenna said, drawing the curtains and turning on the nightlight. What she didn't know was that the moment those curtains closed, they didn't just cover a pane of cold glass. They also concealed a face pressed against it, silent and waiting. Jenna sat on the living room couch downstairs, the remote in her hand, though her eyes weren't really on the screen. The rain kept falling. The hum of the air conditioner continued, but the house seemed to be holding its breath. She felt something strange, as if someone were standing just outside the door, listening to her every move. She shook off the thought. It was just a feeling, not real. She was the babysitter, and her job was to keep everything under control. About an hour later, close to 10 p.m., Jenna was cleaning up the dishes when she heard a voice, soft but clear, from upstairs. "Miss Jenna?" It was Danny. She quickly headed upstairs. The boy was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide, clutching his stuffed bear. There was knocking again. "At the window," Danny whispered. Jenna turned on the light, pulled the curtain back. Outside was thick darkness and the faint yellow glow of the neighbor's porch light. Nothing else. No silhouette. No tree branches tapping the glass. "It's probably just the rain," she said, forcing a reassuring smile. "Sometimes rain can sound like knocking." Danny nodded, though his eyes didn't leave the window. Jenna tucked the blanket around him, said a few gentle words, and left the room with the door slightly ajar. She hadn't even made it halfway down the stairs when, knock. A dry, distinct sound. Not raining. She turned back, heart pounding, climbed the stairs quickly, headed for Danny's room. The boy was already sitting upright again, trembling. "You heard it, right? It came back." Jenna yanked the curtain open. No one. But this time, her palms were ice cold. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The window's locked." But as she bent down to check the lock, the hallway light reflected against the glass. And she saw it. A smudged handprint, clear, from the outside. Jenna stepped back, breathing quickened. Right now, reason told her to call the police. She pulled out her phone. No signal. The Wi-Fi network didn't even show up. "No way," she murmured. She did the only thing she could: protect the children. She moved Alexander into Danny's room, locked the door, and blocked it with a dresser from inside. Called the boys' parents. Thankfully, they were already on their way home. "There's someone outside," Jenna said quickly. I'm not sure if they're still here." After hanging up, she sat against the door, holding Danny, who was shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, outside, there was a rustling in the grass. Not raining, but the sound of running. Hurried, toward the woods. She rushed to the window and caught a glimpse. A slender figure, hoodie up, sprinting into the darkness. Police arrived 10 minutes later. They found no one. But one officer, after hearing Jenna's story, simply nodded and said, "There have been a lot of reports like this lately. Some guy who likes knocking on windows at night. They called him the Tapper. No one's ever caught him. No one knows where he comes from. Only this. He never tries the front door. He only knocks, softly, persistently, and waits to see who's brave enough to pull the curtain aside." Jenna curled up in the corner of the room, both hands gripping the small paring knife she had found in the kitchen drawer. Danny had fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion, while Alexander clutched his pillow, eyes fixed wide open on the window. The police had left. The boys' parents came home not long after, visibly relieved to find the children unharmed. But Jenna couldn't feel safe. Something out there had seen her, and she had seen it back. Ever since that night, whenever it rained, Jenna would jolt awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, ears straining as if she could still hear the knocking on glass, on walls, inside her head. The smudged handprints remained etched in her memory, cold and vivid, as if they weren't just physical marks, but a promise. I'll come back. A week later, the family invited her over to thank her, telling her they had installed cameras, changed the locks, and that police promised increased patrols in the area. Jenna reluctantly agreed. That night, it rained again. She sat on the bus ride home, jacket soaked, stomach knotted. When she arrived at her place, a ground-floor apartment with large windows, she pulled the curtains tightly shut, then turned on every light in the house. The clock read 10:43, still early, but sleep wouldn't come. Jenna made herself a cup of cocoa and sat in a chair, trying to read to calm her nerves. But just then, knock. 3 taps. Slow. Cold. She slammed the book shut, her whole body going numb. The knock wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. But it was so familiar, every muscle in her body went taut like piano wire. It was the window, the right side window, where the curtain didn't fully cover one corner. She stood, walked slowly toward it, empty-handed. She had left the knife back in the kitchen. With each step, the floorboards seemed louder than they should. Knock, a second time. Her hand trembled as it reached for the edge of the curtain. For a moment, she wondered, if I don't pull it back, will it just go away? But instinct screamed. She yanked the curtain open. Outside, nothing, just rain, bending trees, a flicker of streetlight, no figure, no face. Jenna exhaled, stepped back, and just then, from the opposite window, another knock. She spun around, the other window. That curtain wasn't closed. She stepped forward, heart racing to the edge of explosion. 1 step, 2 steps, and then something crawled across the glass, fast, low, like a body slithering. She froze, breath caught in her throat, not her imagination. This time, it was finding its way inside. Jenna doesn't remember exactly what she did next. Everything after the figure slid past the glass window became a blur. The sound of her heart pounding, her phone hitting the floor, her footsteps pounding as she ran madly toward the kitchen. She grabbed the paring knife, locked the room, wedged a chair beneath the doorknob, then curled up behind the sofa, trembling as if in a fever. The rain kept falling, steady and cold. But every drop that hit the windows made Jenna flinch. She didn't know if the man was still out there, didn't know if he had left, or if he was just standing silently, waiting for her to come out. The police arrived nearly 30 minutes after she called. They found no one, but outside, in the yard, something made them fall silent. Footprints. On the soaked lawn, a series of prints circled Jenna's home. Not running, not rushed, but walking round and round, as if someone had been calmly pacing, looking for a way in. Still, there wasn't much the police could do. No face, no camera, no evidence, only the fear etched in Jenna's eyes, and a chilling piece of advice from the young officer. Next time, don't pull the curtain. If you hear knocking, stay silent. Jenna left town a few months later. She quit babysitting, moved into a college dorm with a roommate, but whenever it rained, she'd still wake up in the middle of the night. And sometimes, even though she lived on the 3rd floor, she'd still hear a faint knock from the window, like a reminder that some people don't need to break in. They just need to know you're there and that you still have the habit of looking out. The summer Ethan turned 8, all he wanted was to play Ratchet and Clank all day and eat cold pizza in the mornings. His parents decided to go on a weekend getaway, a trip they called Rekindling the Romance, and hired a new babysitter, a 16-year-old named Nathan. Ethan didn't pay much attention. As long as someone brought him pizza, he was fine. And at first, Nathan seemed just that, unremarkable, not strange. Just a lanky teenager with messy hair, deep-set eyes, and a half-smile that was hard to read. The first night went as any child would hope, playing games until midnight, eating snacks without being scolded. Nathan didn't talk much, but when Ethan invited him to play the versus mode, he nodded and unexpectedly won 3 games in a row. Ethan liked him a bit more after that. The next day, Nathan took Ethan and his little sister out to play in the yard. He smiled. He acted as the referee for their mini soccer match. He brought water for the kids. He even ordered pizza using the money Ethan's parents had left. Everything seemed perfect until the second night arrived. Ethan lay in his room, the lights turned off, his game console carefully placed on the table. He didn't fall asleep immediately. Like any child, he always kept one eye open, just to make sure no monsters were hiding under the bed. And then, click. The door opened very softly. A figure stood still in the corner. Not Mom, not Dad. It was Nathan. Shh, he whispered, his voice so low it sent chills down Ethan's spine. It's me. Ethan didn't respond. Nathan took a step, then another, very slowly, very quietly. He reached out and pulled the blanket off Ethan, and at that very moment, Ethan screamed. The scream pierced through the darkness, and Ethan knew for sure this was not a dream. After Ethan's scream, Nathan froze. He stood motionless at the edge of the bed, his hands suspended midair. Ethan curled up, heart pounding. Nathan neither advanced nor spoke. He remained there for what felt like an eternity, until he silently turned away, exiting the room and closing the door as if nothing had happened. The room was pitch black, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay still, trembling, with cold sweat soaking the sheets. It took nearly 10 minutes before he dared to move, quietly retrieving a blanket from under the bed and tiptoeing to his sister's room. It was close to 2 a.m. His sister was sound asleep. Ethan lay on the floor, a few steps from her bed, back against the wardrobe. He didn't want her to be alone, not after the look Nathan had given him. That look, Ethan couldn't describe it. It wasn't angry or friendly. It was empty, as if whatever was watching him wasn't entirely human. The next morning, Nathan was absent from breakfast, but the dishes were washed and food was laid out. It was as if he deliberately avoided them. Ethan told his sister he had a nightmare the night before and said nothing more. He didn't know his parents' phone number and didn't know how to call the police. Worst of all, he wasn't sure anyone would believe him. The entire day passed in silence. Nathan didn't enter Ethan's room, didn't speak, leaving only a note. I need some quiet today. The third night. Ethan didn't plan to sleep. He blocked the door with a chair, clutching a pillow as he sat on the floor. But exhaustion overtook him. He drifted off without realizing. Until, click. The sound of a door opening. But this time, not his room. His sister's. Ethan sprang up, quietly opened his door, and stepped into the dark hallway. His heart raced. The nightlight in his sister's room still glowed dimly, and in the middle of the room, Nathan stood, leaning as if observing. "Stop!" Ethan shouted. Nathan startled. He turned. He said something very softly, perhaps an excuse, perhaps a calming word, but Ethan couldn't make it out. He only saw Nathan step back, then flee to his room. Ethan slammed the door shut, locking it. He didn't sleep that night, nor did he take his eyes off his sister. And the next morning, when their parents returned, Ethan said nothing. Not because he didn't want to, but he couldn't articulate the truth in words. He only knew, if he hadn't woken up that night, things might have turned out differently. Forever. The next morning, Nathan vanished as if he had never existed. No farewell note, no cleanup. Not a single trace indicated he had spent 3 days in that house. Ethan's parents returned at 9 a.m., brimming with energy after their getaway. They laughed, hugged their children, and inquired about the weekend. Ethan merely shook his head with a faint smile. He didn't share anything. Not out of fear, but because he couldn't. Everything that had transpired was too bizarre, too unbelievable, as if extracted from a 3-night-long nightmare. When his mother asked why he had slept on his sister's bedroom floor, he simply replied, "I felt cold." She chuckled and said, "Maybe you're coming down with something," then poured him a glass of orange juice. A part of Ethan yearned to scream, to recount everything, but his throat constricted each time he tried to speak. They never hired Nathan again. No one inquired further about him. Even weeks later, when Ethan attempted to find him online, through Facebook, Instagram, or school records, he found nothing. No, Nathan had never attended the school his parents mentioned. No one had ever heard that name. He had become a ghost. Years passed, and Ethan thought he had forgotten. But one autumn night, while studying in his room, now a 17-year-old, he heard a very soft knock at the front door. 3 taps, very light, very even. His heart clenched. Without understanding why, his legs carried him to the foyer. The hallway light flicked on. The white door remained closed. No sound. But there was something in the air, a pungent scent of dampness, of cold sweat. Ethan pressed his eye to the peephole. No one. But beneath the door there was something. A photograph. Ethan bent down and picked it up. It was a family photo. Old, faded. A picture taken on some Thanksgiving years ago. But it wasn't the photo that sent chills down his spine. It was the scribbled red ink on the back. "I should have finished that night." Ethan clenched the photo, his heart pounding in his ears. He stepped back, eyes fixed on the door. Nathan was still out there, still remembered. And now, he knew Ethan hadn't forgotten. Never would. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the chair, the photograph lying on the table like living evidence. No one believed him. His mother dismissed it as a cruel prank. His father brushed it off as trivial. But Ethan knew. No one else could have written that line. No one but Nathan. He tried to retrace everything. Old email addresses, messenger messages, any trace that could link to that name. Still the same. Blank. As if Nathan had never existed, or was never Nathan to begin with. A week later, Ethan installed a camera outside the door. He began locking all windows and side doors, checking every closet before bed, even as a tall, sturdy young man. Not out of fear, but caution. He understood one thing. Some obsessions don't fade with age. They don't diminish. They just wait for a chance to return. Years later, Ethan recounted the story for the first time during a therapy session. The therapist nodded, speaking of childhood trauma memories. Ethan nodded too, but deep down, he knew. It wasn't over. Not because he hadn't healed, but because he hadn't left. Sometimes, on nights too quiet, he'd wake at 2:14 a.m., the same time as that first night. No knocking, no footsteps, just a feeling, as if someone was standing outside his room door, not knocking, not calling, just waiting. And Ethan understood. If he opened the door, just once, it would all start again. Because Nathan never disappeared. He's just waiting. for the right moment to continue. 3 storytellers, 3 sleepless nights, and 3 reasons why you should never take a knock lightly, whether it's from a closet, a window pane, or the darkness in your very own room. If you found yourself shivering at any point, or if part of you is now debating whether to pull back the curtain and check, welcome. You've just stepped into our world. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next sleepless night. Like this video if you've ever had a moment that made you afraid to fall asleep again. And don't forget to leave a comment. Which story gave you the biggest chills? Or share your own creepy experience. Who knows? It might just become the next entry in this series. We are Creepline, where the most ordinary things become the most terrifying. Turn off the lights, lock the door, and sweet dreams, if you can.